So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our February webinar, which is on understanding statewide programs of study. We appreciate you joining us this morning, especially due to the fact that we rescheduled this webinar due to power and water outages here in Texas. So I know it was quite a week that we had across the state and elsewhere. So we were able to reschedule. We have some great information here from TEA on understanding statewide programs of study, as well as what's going on in other districts and what kind of resources we have to support programs of study here at Texas OnCourse. So with Texas OnCourse, all Texas students, no matter where they come from or where they're headed, have a plan for success after high school. We are a college and career initiative that is state funded, and we are housed at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. If you have not accessed any of our webinars or videos on YouTube, please take a minute and check out that link and you can follow us. This is where we post all of the webinars. We're also recording this webinar and we send an email follow-up with access to the recording to everyone that has registered. And then we post those to our YouTube channel. So if you go ahead and like that, you are able to follow us and also search on key topics. So this is just quickly going to go over the agenda we have for our webinar. We're going to start off with a resource spotlight from Texas OnCourse and the Academy from Sam Kimmel from our content and resources team. Jarrad Toussant from the Texas Education Agency is going to review programs of study as well as changes and provide a really comprehensive overview on the programs of study. And then Christy Barrera from San Felipe del Rio CISD, who's a CTE coordinator and also an alumni chair, is going to talk a little bit about district perspectives on programs of study, and then we'll have some time for question and answer. My name's Laura Guggen, and I'm Director of Program Implementation at Texas OnCourse. We are in the third year of our webinar series, and I work with school districts across the state, as well as a couple of other states, on their implementation of Texas OnCourse. Sam?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Kimmel, and I currently work on Texas OnCourse's content and resources team, making sure any high school related content featured in our products and resources is accurate, timely, and relevant to your work.
Good morning, everyone. Jarrad Toussant, Division Director for the College Career Military Preparation Division here at the Texas Education Agency. Pleased to be with you this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christy Barrera. I'm the CTE coordinator in Del Rio, Texas, and I got involved with Texas OnCourse as a leader fellow a couple of years ago as the CTE counselor for our district. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all for joining us this morning. So before we go ahead and dive in, just to ask a question to our attendees, if you could, in the chat box, sharing what best practices have you used to help students select a best fit programs of study? And just take a minute and think about some of your best practices and include those in the chat. And you will see the question there as well. Okay, so I see CTE teachers talking to 8th graders, having parent meetings, using a middle school curriculum, one-on-one career counseling, career inventories. Great. I know that we use this as an opportunity to share resources and share ideas quite a bit across school districts. So these are real helpful to share, and hopefully the webinar will generate some additional best practices and ideas. targeted information to grade level students, large and small group. I know a lot of schools have also changed and shifted to virtual meetings as well, touring different programs, interest quizzes, CTE teachers going over next level courses. Great, these are some wonderful ideas. Thank you all for sharing. And feel free to include those in the chat box if you have others. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Sam from our Content and Resources team.
Great, thank you, Laura. So as mentioned, I will be walking through a few resources we feel can support you in advising your students on programs of study. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. So for those of you tuning in who are new to Texas OnCourse, the Academy is our online professional learning resource for college and career advising. It's free for all Texas educators and will help you prepare any student for any post-secondary option. To get to the Academy, click on the Educators drop-down menu from our homepage and select Academy under Educator Development. On that page, click Educators Register or Log In to create your free account if you haven't already done so. And here is an example learner view of the Texas OnCourse Academy dashboard. And this is where you can explore modules to complete and check your progress on any that you're currently working on. Our modules are grouped by content area, and there are 4 content areas specific to a K-12 audience: financial aid, post-secondary pathways, specialties, and career pathways. Within each of those content areas, you can earn badges for completing the module or group of modules within that badge. And in today's webinar, we want to call out 2 modules: high school personal graduation plan and career clusters, pathways, and endorsements. You can find both of these in the academic planning badge, which is part of our career pathways content area. And those are highlighted on the screen here. Okay, so once you've selected the academic planning badge, you should see both of these modules listed. The first, career clusters, pathways, and endorsements, doesn't dive into specifics on programs of study. However, it does provide useful information on career clusters, career pathways, and endorsements, as the name implies, which are all topics that can help facilitate productive discussions around programs of study. Career clusters and career pathways can help students connect their program of study to future career opportunities, while endorsements can help them see the academic connection between what they're studying now and what they plan to study in the future. And Laura, if you go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about how our programs of high school personal graduation plan module relates to today's discussion. And so this module provides a wealth of information to support you in creating solid personal graduation plans for your students. Unit 3 in particular provides information on advising students through career and technical education, or CTE opportunities. Here is where you're going to find the Academy's most consolidated information on programs of study, including insight into what programs of study are, why they're important, and how to link them with the student's high school personal graduation plan. And in this module unit, you can also find links to downloadable brochures, which are also called framework docs, from the Texas Education Agency that are specific to each approved statewide program of study. Again, you can access those links in the Academy by selecting programs of study from the Unit 3 drop-down menu and navigating to the Y programs of study screen. And we'll take a quick look inside one of those brochures on the next slide. Alrighty, so here we have a snippet from the Web Development Program of Study Framework doc, and we're going to be diving further into these docs later in the hour, but for now, I want to highlight a few pieces of important information you'll find in each PDF. First, you can review relevant CTE course sequences, which can help when building a student's schedule. You can see various educational pathways a student may pursue after high school. Think of this as insight into where their program of study may take them. You can view extended learning opportunities, including work-based learning, and you can get an idea of potential careers a student within a particular program of study may consider or want to work towards after high school. And before passing off to our next presenter, I want to mention that you can also locate our resources, including anything that we link out to, such as those links just mentioned, in the additional resources section at the end of each Academy module. Or you can also find resources such as PDFs and other handouts on our Pinterest page. We are at Texas OnCourse, pinterest.com/Texas OnCourse. And Jarrad, you can go ahead and take it away.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I want to thank you for your time to take some time to understand a little bit more about what we are doing as a state to move toward a more high quality and consistent delivery of our programs of study as what is a very new direction for the state, given that this is the first year of its statewide required implementation. Well, before I do that, I want to acknowledge and echo the earlier acknowledgements of the thanks to all of you that are on the ground working with our communities and our kiddos to survive what has been just nothing short of a crisis upon a crisis within the past several weeks. And so we know that many of you are still digging out of that situation and want to thank you for the work that you're continuing to do to advance the opportunities for our kiddos while we try to navigate sort of putting our lives together in the midst of a pandemic and the later impacts of natural disaster in our state. So as earlier mentioned, I'm the division director for the College Career Military Preparation Division here at the Texas Education Agency. And our agency is really oriented around these four main strategic priorities. And if we were in person, I would ask the obligatory question, how many of you have seen this chart before? Because it is our job to, in effect, make sure that you all have been inundated and saturated with this image to understand the scope and nature of our work. But specifically, our division resides in the area of the third strategic priority of connecting high school to college and career. We do that, as we look at the next slide, through what we believe of or see as a braiding of our business and our education continuum through the career pathways framework to a what we believe is a win-win, a mutually beneficial end state whereby our students have opportunities to attain in-demand, livable wage, and upwardly mobile employment, but also build a skill talent pool for our state. So we'll talk about specifically how we do that in the context of the statewide secondary programs of study. And today we'll talk about the requirements of Perkins 5 that are the root of the work that we have done here at the state agency. On our next slide, we'll talk about the benefits of that work to our, not just the state, but to our campuses, our districts, and our students. We'll talk about the impact of the data that these new programs of study allow us to gather, collect, and use to improve program quality and efficiency and effectiveness. And then to talk a little bit more about some of the resources which you previewed earlier. If we look at our next slide, when we talk about the impact of this work on students, we really want to sort of make this concrete in terms of what we're doing here. We believe that the labor market basically prepares and shapes pathways that expand, accelerate, and amplify the academic experience of students, and that has a transformational impact. We believe that that also is true for our academic teachers. And if I were to revise this talking point, it should also say teachers and advisors with information related to occupational opportunities that, again, expand, accelerate, and amplify the students' academic careers and are done through particularly the importance and the impact of career counseling. We know that it allows us to leverage post-secondary in incredible ways, which we'll talk about. And then we know that it allows us to bridge the gap between industry and classroom through a variety of different mechanisms, including externships and internships. But the overall premise, which is the same one behind House Bill 5 that led to the endorsements, which many of you work with on a daily basis, is that increasing the relevance of the course content to actual industry and the world of work increases engagement, expands application opportunities, brings in adults from the workforce, and that increases outcomes. There are a few sort of technical terms that we'll mention, from industry-based certifications to programs of study to the Perkins 5 legislation itself, which are detailed on the next slide. But in short, what all of this entails are ways that we can deliver the 277 courses which have been approved as a part of the state's CTE course catalog with the relevant credentials in post-secondary and industry base, which are critical as outputs of these programs. When we look back, when we talk about specifically this middle term programs of study, there's a history here that we want to remind many of you of on our next slide that goes back to the 2006, which is, I guess, a recent history, which is a world living under the previous iteration of the federal statute Perkins 4 at this time, which essentially laid out the concentration or the career cluster, 16 career cluster model, and organized CTE courses by clusters. If you move forward to House Bill 5, we began to now add in and begin to think about the use and the early selection by our students of a concentration of courses that would be both a mixture of academic elective and others that would be in line with not just their interests, but with the fields that they would go into after high school graduation, which brought us to 2000 and 2001, this current school year, where we now have essentially an entirely new federal legislation with entirely new components which have driven very different inputs and outputs to our system. So why programs of study? If we look at our next slide, we detail many of the core elements on the following slide. So what you basically have are the ability to take these 277 courses and to put them into actual meaningful course sequences, reverse mapped from in-demand occupations. You also have the ability in the next bullet to address key technical and academic as well as employability skills that can be braided and aligned through these course sequences. The ability to align to the needs of a state or region or local area, and then the ability to have courses like you would in post-secondary in our next bullet that actually progress in specificity. And this next bullet, which I believe is the most important aspect, the allowance of multiple entry and exit points that allow for credentialing. This does a number of things. One, it ensures that our programs of study are not terminal, that we are not basically putting a student into a program or occupation or credential that they can't stack or progress beyond. And also it means that this is an opportunity for all students. It's not just for the kids who we would have previously said, oh, they're not college bound students, but really as a road, a highway through which students can attain experiences, credentials, and skills that they can apply in college and in career. And then lastly, that culminate in a recognized post-secondary credential. We'll not belabor the point, but besides what we've already noted as benefits to students and to the economies, we are able to increase the rigor of our programs through this new framework. Through TEACS revisions that are currently happening, we're able to provide better flexibility for teacher certifications, which we know is a major headache for folks who are doing master planning, master scheduling, and course planning, and we can collect better data. As we look at the way that we derive the actual programs of study, we started with the end in mind, which are the high wage in-demand occupations. We then said, what would a student be able to attain either en route to that occupation or as a lateral or advanced progression within that occupation, to understand sort of what groupings of occupations our courses and academic content would lead to, and then align that to post-secondary. We did that over the course, if you look at the next slide, of roughly a year and change of extensive public engagement, which, as I mentioned earlier, has led us to this academic year of the first year of implementation for programs of study. Now, what are they? If we look at our next slide, we actually see a snippet of the 53 statewide approved programs of study. And if you remember from the previous slide, what we basically did is we took all of the high growth, high wage occupations and said, okay, how many of these are related? And then how many of these can we develop actual course sequences that expand into post-secondary and meet all of those aspects of stackability and portability that we talked about earlier to land on these programs of study, which, if you look at our next slide, allow us to have a formal mechanism to finally give the state a guide rails in the delivery by way of saying, these are the ones that you are approved to provide, providing a sequence that can be used for our federal reporting for the first time in our state, by providing a meaningful definition of what it means to be a CTE concentrator, and also what it means to be a CTE completer. What you'll see on our next slide is just a basic illustration of the various ways that students can now be coded within the system. So, and meaningful applications of what that data now can mean for important aspects of accountability, quality, but also for the overall progression of our students and being able to track them. And so for the sake of time, I'm going to skip what I was hoping to be a discussion point in our next slide, but would want you to just think about ways that you can understand and see sort of the personas and the experiences of our students, and begin to understand how their coding and data collection can dramatically improve the way that we have line of sight transparency and the ability to support our students through our course sequences. So we can go to the next slide. So these are some of the questions I'd offer for us to think about in terms of the benefits, the challenges, and those that should be involved in the decision making. And it was interesting to see the chats in terms of ways that work is currently happening. I'll very briefly give just a quick run through of the other processes that are important parts of our programs of study. We talked about the data collection and reporting. There are on the next slide a summary of many of the new aspects that the new system allows for us to see. The most important of which I'll indicate for you on the next slide, which is a local needs assessment and local application, which essentially allows for a district to look at the delivery of programs in their local area, the needs of their local labor market and their local community, and match that to their course offerings and their credential mapping. The reason why we highlight this is because as a new process, many districts and stakeholders are not aware that this is happening on a recurring basis as a required part of the local district being able to even qualify now to receive Perkins funding, which is an entirely new process. What this would then allow us to do is on our next slide is be able to see how our students are performing on a whole new set of indicators at a statewide and a local level, which are entirely new areas or line of sight into student performance relative to our other programs. And for the sake of time, I'll just shortly give you a synopsis of the remaining slides, which is to basically allow us to actually even retroactively see how our students would have performed with these new course sequences were they in operation. And what we see is a high degree of concentrators and completers in our state already. We think that the number will grow. You can see that broken down in the next slide by the actual career cluster. But then we have a number of slides here that show how our students are actually performing, CTE students, against the non-CTE learners. And we are able to now, for each of these major indicators, see the impact of CTE on not just the aggregate student population versus non-CTE students, but the sub-aggregate and the sub-populations. There's already been, if we move forward to slides 29, some mention of our program resources, the frameworks that we have available on our website, which have a number of components that lay out the post-secondary progressions, the work-based learning aspects and application, and the ability for students, educators, and administrators and counselors to understand the labor market opportunities provided for these programs. And also we are developed and have made available at the very last in slide 41 and 40 and 41, templates that districts can use to use these resources on their own for the purposes of their own local planning. So I appreciate your time, particularly given the sheer quantity of information that we tried to share with you in a short period of time. Laura, I'll yield it back to you for any questions or discussion.
Sure. I apologize, Jarrad, if some of the slides were off based on topic. I can't always see the number that you're referring to unless I see the slideshow. But is there anything you wanted me to finally focus on before we kick it over to Christy? I know that you had quite a bit of really great information here. And then some of these later ones are regarding resources.
That's right. And just the last slides show the ways that we've made the templates available for local customization. We know that the course sequences can change. We have various courses that districts can plug in at each of the 4 levels. If you look at the next couple of slides. And so we've made those resources available for districts to be able to customize to their local programs of study and those offerings there. So wanted to make sure that resource was noted, and to also most importantly allow time through either chat discussion or follow-up email for ways that we can improve our resources and supports in the area of programs of study.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jarrad. And I would also just echo, when you're talking about some of the local decisions in coursework to receive Perkins funds, we actually get a lot of questions about that at Texas OnCourse. So we had a lot of interest in this webinar for programs of study. And I know our content team has been working hard to update anything that's in the Academy to reflect TEA's resources. So this was a great overview. And these are by region here. So thank you so much, Jarrad. And there is your contact information listed there. And as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, we will add links and resources as well, and contact information for our guest speakers. Okay, Christy Barrera is going to talk a little bit about CTE programs and resources in the San Felipe Del Rio district.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, I'm Christy Barrera. I'm the CTE coordinator in Del Rio, Texas. We're a small community on the border of Mexico of about 40,000 people. While we are small, we do have a 6A high school, an early college high school, and over 3,000 students, or about 90% of our high school students participating in our CTE program. So when we're talking about preparing students for high school, we rely heavily on Texas OnCourse resources. We are attempting to make the College and Career Readiness course a requirement for all 8th graders in the near future. Currently, we have about half of all 8th graders in this course, and we use the Texas OnCourse middle school curriculum. It's a wonderful free resource. If you've never seen this, it really has everything a teacher could need: an implementation plan, lessons with activities, assessments, take-home activities to get the parents involved, and a space-themed game called Middle Galaxy. What I love about the game is that students are having fun while being exposed to high-demand, high-wage jobs that they may never have even heard of. We also use Map My Grad quite a bit, especially during pre-registration. Sometimes we have students who are new to our district who have never done any type of career exploration, and they don't know what endorsement to select. So Map My Grad provides a very quick and fun career interest inventory so we can identify which areas of interest the students have. On our next slide, we continue by providing CTE training for all secondary counselors, since they're all involved in pre-registration for our 8th graders. While our high school counselors work with the programs of study throughout the year, many of our other secondary counselors do not. So we want to make sure that we review them in detail and answer any questions they have, and also provide updates to our programs of study. Our CTE counselor also does a great job of providing classroom presentations to all 8th graders during the school day. And we also share a CTE video which highlights each of our programs of study. Then during the school day, our 8th graders attend an annual CTE fair, which is led by our CTE student ambassadors. This will give the students not only the counselor's perspective, but it also provides them with input from students who have gone through the full 4 years of each program of study. This year, since we had to comply with the COVID regulations, we have had to hold those CTE fairs virtually, but they have been successful. The presentations in CTE fair are repeated in 9th grade, just in case any student is interested in changing his or her endorsement, or the student may want to add an additional program of study to his or her 4-year plan. On the next slide, we can see a little bit about what Jarrad and Sam both provided guidance on. So you can access the programs of study webpage on TEA's website. And if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see a link that will take you to the editable Word framework documents. We updated all of the programs of study that we offer in our district to reflect only the courses and high school certifications that we offer, so that things are more clear-cut and easy to understand for students in our district. We also added a more descriptive second page so that students will be able to read a student-friendly description of each course. They will also be able to see which courses are considered advanced for endorsement purposes, if there are any prerequisites and college credits earned through their dual credit or local articulation agreements. On the next slide, you'll see that we also created a programs of study at a glance. Because we offer 18 different programs of study, it can be a lot of pages for counselors to flip through. So we created the at a glance document for counselors to refer to when they want to quickly look up a sequence of courses for any program of study. And you can see it's also divided by the different endorsements. And on the last slide, you can see that CCMR is the big acronym on everyone's mind these days. The programs of study can help you in your district improve this aspect of accountability. For example, we have a very high success rate in the health science certifications in our district. We offer EMT, CNA, CMA, phlebotomy, and EKG, and we had a 100% passing rate for several years. I think a large reason for this is due to the fact that we require our students to follow the programs of study. Each class builds on the rigor and students develop a strong work ethic. By the time they enroll in the certification courses during their senior year, they are well prepared and have good time management and study skills, paired with the strong foundational knowledge obtained from the previous courses. While we do offer over 70 different IBCs on the statewide approved list, there are some programs of study for which the IBCs seem a little out of reach. For example, our aviation maintenance student certifications are mainly related to the FAA approved programs, which we don't have in our district. So fortunately, we've been able to align the state approved program of study with the local junior college requirements. And now all of our aviation maintenance students are able to earn a level 1 certificate and graduate from Southwest Texas Junior College. So they're able to earn that CCMR point. If you would like any of my templates, feel free to contact me. One thing I love about the CTE community is that everyone is so willing to help one another and share ideas, templates, and everything else. So no one has to reinvent the wheel. I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Laura.
Thank you so much, Christy. These are fantastic resources. I think that brings us to an opportunity now to go ahead and get some questions that you might have. And I see one already. I'll put this out there, Sherry. Jarrad, if you'd like to talk about this, you can. If not, this is something that we can maybe get and send out in our email. But Sherry asked, do you have any updates on the Effective Advising Framework initiative led by TEA?
Yes, great question. So to complement what is a tool that we've been put out to the field called the Effective Schools Framework, which is basically the aggregate of all the initiatives that TEA is supporting at the campus level and how to integrate those. We're developing an effective advising framework to essentially say, how do you effectively advise and counsel around all of these initiatives, K-12. And so we are field testing the framework this spring, and if districts are available or interested in participating in that field test, they should certainly reach out to me with the contact information that was provided on the PowerPoint. And then there will be a pilot next year of districts whose will be much like our field test, will be allowed to be self-select themselves to help us pilot the framework. So more to come there based upon interest of local districts in participating.
Great. Thank you for addressing that, Jarrad. I know we get a lot of questions on the framework and the progress, so that's great to hear as well. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We were able to get some great information from Sam Kimmel, Jarrad Toussant, and then Christy Barrera. So now we are available for questions. We have Tama Reed from Texas OnCourse monitoring the chat and taking a look at that, as well as the question and answers. So we'll be here for a few minutes if you want to go ahead and add those to either box. And once again, you'll receive an email with the recording that will be connected to YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed, please do that. Well, I think all of our guest speakers, we can stay on a couple of minutes for any of you that come up with any questions. So stay tuned for our email. Again, thank you so much for your flexibility. I know it has been, as Jarrad mentioned, crisis on top of crisis. So our hope is to get you the most updated information we possibly can and get it to you in webinar format. So we typically don't reschedule, but also check our webinar page for any changes. I see one, I know it's not in relation to the subject, but is there a resource for graduating seniors we can direct them to partner with employers who are looking to hire students with a certification? Jarrad, do you have any thoughts on that?
For graduating seniors, I think we always have been encouraging students to register for the Work in Texas program, which is led by the Workforce Commission and is meant to be the go-to resource for the opportunities that employers are looking for in terms of high demand, and certifications in particular areas are certainly in the high demand space. So that's a great resource to look at in terms of opportunities. And then I see Major Jones has a great suggestion here, which is to contact their local workforce solutions office or their local workforce board, who may also have programs for local students who are graduating with certifications.
That's correct. And earlier in our monthly webinar series, we had Workforce Solutions join us and talk about things like apprenticeships and things like that. We can connect that content in the email follow-up because we had some great resources at Workforce Solutions, exactly what Jarrad was talking about. So thank you, Major, for adding that, and we'll send it to you. I saw there were a couple of other questions. Let's look at this one if possible. Do you have any updates on the work-based learning handbook led by TEA?
No updates except to say that it is still in development. Our staff member who was leading that work left to start a startup to support districts with work-based learning. So we had to start over with staffing that role, which, as you can imagine, is a unique position to find, and we were able to do so recently, and are hard at work to move that toolkit forward. So look for something tentatively by end of calendar year for that resource.
Great. And I think we probably have, I guess, enough for Lisa Cottle's comment. Just anything else about the effective framework and field testing, or notifying you, Jarrad, on the field testing?
No, just that we would encourage districts to reach out that are interested in doing the field testing. We'll give you some additional information regarding sort of the scope, responsibility, some of the data collection, but also some of the support that we'll be providing. Happy to connect you with that. And also, you don't have to be a part of the field test in order to pilot the EAF in the 21-22 school year. So if you have interest in either of the two, please do let us know.
Great. Thank you, Jarrad. Any other questions before we log off here? All right, well, please take care, stay healthy and safe, and we will follow up with our email and all of our information in the next couple of days. And we'll see you all soon. Have a wonderful day. Thank you again to our guest speakers.